show for the morning. The topic is AIDS and white females. And we have with us to talk about this particular topic Miss DRunions2. And of course, Ms. Runions, we promised before the end of our first segment that we'd give you an opportunity to talk about the devastating impact that this disease is having upon white females. As we indicated earlier, we have quite a bit of statistical information dealing with the impact upon African Americans, the impact upon African American females, but we also know that this disease is also having an impact, as you have demonstrated, upon white females. And so that's the kind of information that we'd like for you to try to give at this particular time.
All right. Well, when I became infected in 1992, only 4% of the people in the United States who had the infection were women. Today in Tennessee, we're right at 30% of the new infections are female. About 25% are white and 74%, we have an other category, but most are African American women. But when I became infected, my daughter, who is a very outgoing person, decided that she needed for me to go to England before I died. And she wrote Regis and Kathy Lee and wrote to them about my infection. It was the first time they ever used the word AIDS in their show. And I was chosen as one of the mothers to be honored, and we did win a trip to England. While we were there, we went to Cornwall, and while we were there, we spoke to 3 Rotary clubs in Cornwall, which is like a county, and it's at the southernmost tip. And we went there, and they did not have as much HIV as we had, because they have education, sexuality education from the time they're very young, so they don't have the same problem that we have here. So that was my very first experience with being sort of a minority. And when I went to Washington, I found out that there are very few women who are willing or able to go public and talk about these things. So it was important for me. I felt it was important for me to do that. Let me just say, one of the other reasons why I was able to go public is because I knew my family would support me. I knew my children would. I knew my mother. My dad had died by this time. I knew my brothers would support me. And not everybody has that kind of support from their family. I also called my editor as soon as I found out, and I said, someday I want to talk about this. So he said, when you get ready, will you write about it in the paper? And I said, yes. And it took me a few months, and I didn't call him, but he called me, and already from the 4%, we had jumped to 10%.
Just in that time?
Yes, in less than a year. And he said, Debbie, have you seen the numbers for women? And I said, no. And he said, you've got to go public, and now's the time to do it. So that's what I did in August of '93. So we were at 10% in '93, and now we're at 30%.
And 30% of the population affected by this particular disease.
Those of us who are infected, 30% of them are female.
Now, what has been the attitude of, and I think you've already indicated that most women have refused to go public simply because of the stigma that is attached to it. But do you find that to be general among most of them?
Yes, I find it to be general among most people with HIV infection. Either they're drug users, they're gay, they're having sex, and maybe outside of marriage. Anyway, they don't want people to know. And it's very hard to say, I got this in a relationship that was outside of marriage. It's hard to go into the schools and talk to kids about that. It's also easy to tell them, and this is why you need to choose a different path.
This is especially true if you can indicate that only on one indiscretion that this happened to you. And of course, I think many people believe that it's something that can happen to somebody else, if it does not happen to, this is what information I've sort of gleaned from it, that if it does not happen to somebody else, then you don't know anything about it, and et cetera. But when you're saying that this can be a disease that can impact almost any person, there's no person that can be immune from this.
Right, and I get kids that get letters from kids, and one of my favorite ones was, I went home, my mother is divorced. I went home and sat her down and gave her a good talking to. I didn't know mothers could get HIV infection.
Okay.
So I tell the kids are really more better informed than the adults are. So I say, okay, now you have all this information. Go home and talk to your parents about it and educate them. Because it's people my age who are the most prejudiced, and that's because they're the most uninformed.
Well, now, in the long run, I think that we've said time and time again that this disease is almost continually increasing in terms of numbers, and that it's having a tremendous impact outside of the United States. In the long run, what do you see as one of the solutions to this problem? Do we simply just go on and try to provide a little education here or there that might not be working all the time?
I am very, very committed to abstinence-based education rather than abstinence only. If you tell people about HIV and don't give them information on how to stay safe, then what good is it, is sort of my opinion. So that's what I do. I really wish we could put so much more money into vaccine research, because as much as we talk, it takes decades to change behavior in anybody. Look how long it took for smoking. We started talking about cigarettes kill you in 1960. And so we're just now getting to the point where it's not socially cool to be a smoker. So it's going to take a while for us to change behavior. And by then, we could have lost a generation of young people.
Well, I think that's my attitude in reference to it. Now, if we're trying to work at it and we're still losing people as we go, then we're going to lose more in the long run than we're able to save. And so it's a very, very challenging kind of situation here. And so now we're getting ready for this final break, Mrs. Runions, and when we come back, we'll allow you an opportunity to continue this discussion. Of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. We're talking to Mrs.